Inspector Buck Rawlings was a man who lived for the power trip. In the dusty, heat-soaked streets of a small Texas town, his badge wasn't a symbol of service. It was a weapon of injustice. On a Tuesday that felt like a furnace, Buck was prowling the local farmer's market, looking for someone to take advantage of. He saw a girl in a faded denim jacket and a baseball cap, standing near a crate of peaches. To Buck's skeletal logic, she was just an ordinary girl, a nobody he could push around to show the crowd who was boss. He marched up to her, his heavy boots shattering the silence of the morning air. "This crate is blocking the fire lane, sweetheart," he barked, though the crate was nowhere near the lane. The girl looked up with a strange calm that didn't sit well with Buck's ego. She didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. She just looked him in the eye and said, "Actually, Inspector, I checked the zoning map this morning. We're exactly where we're supposed to be." Buck lost control. He didn't see the specific data point of the encrypted phone she was holding. He only saw defiance. In a flash of protective fury for his own pride, Buck raised his hand and slapped her across the face, sending her cap flying. The sensory anchor of the slap echoed through the market, followed by a heavy silence that felt like a ticking time bomb. Buck laughed, thinking he'd won. He had no idea he'd just slapped the administrative commissioner, AC, of the state Audit Bureau, and his career was now on a micro-climax toward total destruction. The sting on Vivian's cheek wasn't just a crimson stain. It was the final nail in Buck's professional coffin. The injustice was so thick you could taste it in the humid Texas air. Vivian stood there, her face turned to the side, feeling the heat of the slap and the sensory anchor of the crowd's collective gasp. She looked at her shattered phone on the pavement, a specific data point of evidence that Buck had just destroyed state property. Buck stood over her, his BMI of pure arrogance looming like a skeletal ghost of the authority he claimed to represent. "You think that badge makes you untouchable?" Vivian whispered, her voice a pure American growl that sent a shiver through the bystanders. Buck just adjusted his duty belt, the leather creaking in the pure American silence. He was taking advantage of her silence, thinking he'd successfully intimidated her. He didn't notice that the ordinary girl was actually documenting the pain of every person in that market through a secret, guardian hidden body cam she wore for undercover stings. This wasn't just a random encounter. It was a masterpiece of calculation. Vivian had heard about Buck's fake documentation and how he used to lock people in basements of debt through illegal fines. Today, the mystery loop was finally closing. Buck smirked, telling her to move along before I find a reason to cuff you, unaware that he was the one about to be processed. What happened next was a strange ritual of tactical patience. Vivian didn't scream for the police. She was the police's boss. She simply reached down, picked up her baseball cap, and dusted it off with a strange calm that started to make Buck feel a little malnourished of confidence. She began to recite specific data points out loud, dates, times, and dollar amounts of bribes Buck had taken over the last 6 months. Buck's face went from crimson to a skeletal white. How did this ordinary girl know about the $180,000 inheritance he'd illegally seized from a local business? The silence was heavy as the crowd realized this was no ordinary confrontation. Vivian pulled out a waterproof notebook and checked off a box. It was a psychological loop that was dismantling Buck's ego in front of everyone. "The identity flip is coming." "Buck," she said, her eyes burning with a protective fury that felt like a military command. Suddenly, Buck's radio crackled to life. It wasn't his dispatcher. It was a secret guardian frequency from the state capitol. The voice on the other end didn't sound like a friend. It sounded like the hammer of justice. The mystery loop had become a noose, and Buck was starting to realize that nature would take its course. He tried to pretend, sleep through the reality of the situation, but the sensory anchor of sirens approaching was getting louder. The sirens weren't the local boys, they were the Black Suit Brigade from the state capitol. 3 black SUVs roared into the market, their tires shattering the silence with a smell of burning rubber. This was a brotherhood mobilization of the highest order. Men in leather and tactical gear swarmed the area, forming a protective fury perimeter around Vivienne. The identity flip was now complete. The ordinary girl was standing in the center of a military command operation, and Buck Rawlings was suddenly the smallest man in Texas. Bones, the lead tactical officer, stepped forward and handed Vivienne a fresh, waterproof notebook and a state-issued tablet. "The cleaners are ready, AC Madam," he said, his voice a pure American grit rumble. Buck stood there, his fake authority falling away like dead skin. He tried to stammer out an apology, a fake scene of regret, but the injustice he'd committed was already wiped clean from any chance of a pardon. Vivienne looked at the crimson sting on her face in the reflection of the SUV window. "He thinks he can lock people in basements and slap his way out of it," she said to Bones. "Show him the basement of shadows he's earned, the sensory anchor of the handcuffs clicking shut on." Buck's wrists was the most satisfying sound the market had ever heard. He had lost control of the town, and now he was just a statistic. Buck was taken to a basement of shadows, an interrogation room that felt like a skeletal ghost of his own making. The injustice was now being unmasked in a pure American silence that was deafening. Vivienne sat across from him, no longer the ordinary girl, but the AC Madam with the power to wipe clean his entire existence from the state records. She revealed the shocking truth. She hadn't picked this market by accident. Buck had targeted her father's small peach farm 20 years ago, using fake documentation to ruin his life. This was a blood debt 20 years in the making. The sensory anchor of the room was cold and sterile. Buck's BMI seemed to shrink as he realized his fake authority was built on the bones of people like Vivienne's father. The mystery loop was finally tied in a knot. "You didn't just slap a girl today, Buck," she whispered, her voice a masterpiece of calculation. "You slapped the ghost of every person you ever took advantage of." The specific data points of his corruption were laid out on the table like a skeletal map of his sins. He was malnourished of excuses. His identity flip from the hunter to the prey was total. He realized he was going to a basement he would never leave, a cell in a high-security prison where his fake records wouldn't mean a thing. Buck Rawlings was sentenced to life without parole, a total outlaw who finally met the real law. The Texas stir created by his downfall led to a wiped clean sweep of the entire district. Vivienne's identity flip became a masterpiece of justice, proving that real heroes still exist even when they're disguised as an ordinary girl. The heart-touching ending to this story is that the peach market flourished, now free from the injustice of Buck's fake authority. This moral story reminds us that judgment and appearances can hide painful truths, but compassion and grit can change destinies. Vivienne proved that a secret guardian is always watching. She didn't just dismantle a corrupt cop. She documented the pain of a community and turned it into a legacy of honor. The sensory anchor of this story is the reminder that you never know who you're truly dealing with, so treat everyone with respect or face the identity flip of a lifetime. Friends, Vivienne showed us that pure American grit always wins against fake authority. If you were cheering when the AC Madam unmasked that corrupt inspector, smash that like button right now. And if you want more heart-touching moral stories of grit, justice, and the untouchable truth, hit the subscribe button for Highway Ghost. Comment below, Team Vivienne, if you believe in justice. Stay loyal, ride for the truth, and we'll see you in the next one.